Pastor Ed here with Daily Devotions for Thursday, March the 16th, 2023. Continue our look at parables. We talked about parables last week, several of them. We're concentrating on the parable that was the gospel reading this past Sunday from Matthew 22, the parable of the wedding banquet. Just a reminder again that that word parable comes from the Greek word parabole, which means to put two things side by side to compare them. And so very often in the parables, and this is a good example, where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king, or the kingdom of heaven is like. So he takes something that people identify with. Again, the definition often use earthly story with a heavenly meaning. Take something that people can understand, identify with, situation, whatever, and then use that to say something significant about what the kingdom of heaven is going to be like, what God's kingdom is going to be like. And so as we started on the parable yesterday, we talked about how he invited people to the wedding banquet, but everybody seemed to have excuses for why they couldn't come. In the parallel story in Luke's gospel, it even goes into a little bit more detail. I bought some oxen, I have bought some land, I just got married myself. And you can imagine those kind of excuses, and maybe you've experienced that in your own life. I talked about that briefly in my sermon on Sunday. And that brings us up to verses 9 and 10. So when the king discovers that people were begging off, and of course, there's that whole other thing about sending troops to destroy the city, and that seems to be a commentary on Jerusalem being conquered and so forth by the Romans in 70 A.D., but in terms of Jesus's parable, he goes on to say, the king talking to his slaves, "Go therefore into the main streets and invite everyone you find to the wedding banquet." Those slaves went out to the streets and gathered all whom they found, both good and bad, so that the wedding hall was filled with guests. Philip Yancey, in his book, What's So Amazing About Grace, gives kind of an updated modern day picture of what this looks like. Again, Jesus uses this idea of the wedding banquet. And so this was a story apparently based on a true story that Yancey describes. And it goes like this: accompanied by her fiancé, a woman went to the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Boston to order what was supposed to be their wedding banquet. They pored over the menu. They made selections of china and silver, pointed to the pictures of flower arrangements that they liked. They both had rather expensive tastes, and the bill came to $13,000. And after leaving a check for half that amount as a down payment, the couple went home to flip through books of wedding announcements. Well, the day came that the announcements were supposed to hit the mailbox, and the potential groom got cold feet. I'm just not sure, he said. It's a big commitment. Let's think about this a little bit longer. And he ended up dumping his fiancée. Well, when the angry fiancée returned to the Hyatt to cancel the banquet, the events manager could not have been more understanding. "The same thing happened to me, honey," she said, and she told of her own broken engagement. But about the refund, she had bad news. The contract, you see, is binding. You're only entitled to $1,300 back. And so you have two options: forfeit the rest of the down payment, which is thousands of dollars, or go ahead with the banquet. "I'm sorry, I really am." Well, it seemed crazy, but the more that the jilted bride thought about it afterwards, the more she liked the idea of going ahead with the party. Not a wedding banquet, mind you, but a big blowout. You see, 10 years before, this same woman had been living in a homeless shelter herself. She had gotten back on her feet, she found a good job, set aside a sizable nest egg, and now she had this wild notion of using her savings to treat the down and outs of Boston to a night on the town. And so it was that in June of 1990, the Hyatt Hotel in downtown Boston hosted a party such as it had never seen before. The hostess changed the menu to boneless chicken in honor of the groom, she said. She sent invitations to rescue missions and homeless shelters, and that warm summer night, people who were used to rummaging through the dumpsters dined instead on chicken cordon bleu. Hyatt waiters in tuxedos served hors d'oeuvres to senior citizens propped up by crutches and aluminum walkers. Bag ladies, vagrants, and addicts took one night off from the hard life on the sidewalks outside and ate instead chocolate wedding cake and danced to big band melodies late into the night. Eventually, the jilted bride spent about $26,000 to feed and entertain those people who could not ever possibly pay her back. Well, Jesus said that if you can see that picture of his wedding banquet parable or this modern updated parable, you get some idea of what the kingdom of God looks like and what I want my church to be like. He said, it's like a banquet in my Father's house. My Father's house is really big and it isn't full yet. And so compel them to come in. And that's the message to us as Christians, of course. Go to the highways, the byways, find the people, especially find people who thought they were a million miles away from God, and invite them to come. Make it a place where grace just flows. Where grace just flows. Alrighty, we'll stop there. We'll pick it up again as we continue. We've got 2 more days to finish off this parable, but just a powerful image of just inviting anybody and everybody in off the streets and saying, you don't deserve to be here. You haven't done anything, to warrant this, but that's what grace is, when we do get what we don't deserve. Well, until tomorrow, take care. We'll see you then. Bye.